Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Finish the Thought. My name is Angelus, and first of all, welcome back. Or maybe I should say, please welcome me back. I know it's been about 2 months since I uploaded my last episode, and I wanted to start by apologizing for disappearing for a while. But the reason is actually a good one. Because I was lucky enough to spend time in Canada, specifically in Nova Scotia, and I decided to take a proper break from work, from the podcasts, from everything, and just live for a little while. And it was honestly one of the best trips I've ever had. I spent time in nature, went kayaking, explored places that I've never been before. I met some incredible people, and for a little while, I actually allowed myself to experience life instead of constantly talking about it. So, if you're interested, I've actually shared quite a bit of photos and videos from my trip over on my Instagram. There are some beautiful landscapes, a few adventures, and probably more pictures than anyone should really see. So, if you want to, go ahead, take a look. But for now, I am back. And I've genuinely missed sitting down behind this microphone. Because if you've listened to my podcast before, you already know this isn't really a podcast where I tell you what to think. It's a podcast where we take an idea that is most generally accepted, we pull it apart, and we keep asking the question to the end until we finish the thought. Sometimes the journey is comfortable and sometimes it isn't, but we always finish the thought. Today I want to talk to you about something that every single one of us think we understand. Love. Not romance, not movies, not Valentine's Day, and not weddings. I want to talk about the idea of love itself. Because I think we've inherited a definition that very few of us ever stop to question. And before we go any further, I want to make one thing very clear. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to think with me. That's all I've ever wanted this podcast to be. I'm not here to tell you what love is. I'm here to ask whether the definition you've been living by is actually your own, or whether it's one that society quietly handed to you without you even realizing it. So today, I don't want you to think about what your parents taught you about love. I don't want you to think about what films tell you love is. I don't want you to think about what your friends believe you should become after 20 years together. I want you to think about your definition. And more importantly, I want you to think about your own life, your own relationship, your own marriage. Because somewhere along the way, we all started hearing the same things. The honeymoon phase wears off, the spark dies, love fades, relationships are hard work. You have to compromise. That's just adulthood. We've heard those sentences so many times that most of us stopped asking whether they were true in the first place. And so that's what I would like to do today. Not argue, not convince, just ask one simple question. What if we've never questioned the definition of love we were handed? So let's finish the thought, shall we? Okay, so we've all heard these things, these same things growing up. Maybe from our parents, maybe from our grandparents, maybe from films, television, books, or social media. But the message is always the same. Love fades, the honeymoon phase ends, relationships are hard work, the fire will die, and you have to compromise. And eventually, you'll settle into something comfortable. We've heard those phrases so many times that they almost become fact. Nobody questions them anymore. They're repeated at weddings, they're repeated by marriage counselors, they're repeated by people who've been together for 30 years. They're just accepted. But today, I want to ask something that I don't think enough people ask. How do we know? How do we know that love is supposed to fade? How do we know that the spark is supposed to disappear? How do we know that being content is the inevitable destination for every relationship? And more importantly, who decided that? Think about it for a second. If someone tells you the sky is green, you'll probably question it. If someone tells you 2 plus 2 equals 5, you'll probably question it. But when someone says, falling in love doesn't last, we just nod. Why? Is this because it's true? Or is this because we've heard it so often that people stop questioning whether it ever was? And that's the thing about beliefs. The older they are, the less likely we are to challenge them. We inherit them, we repeat them, we teach them to our children. And eventually, they'll stop feeling like opinions and start feeling like facts. But here's the problem: if we never question the definition we've been given, how do we know we're actually living according to our own definition? Or are we simply following a script that someone else wrote for us? And before you answer that, let's keep climbing the staircase. Because everyone says relationships require compromise. But what exactly are we compromising here? Okay, so everyone says relationships require compromise. I agree. I think compromise is one of the healthiest things two people can do. But I also think we've stopped asking what compromise actually means. Because compromise can mean a lot of things. If my partner wants Italian food and I want Chinese, we compromise. If I want to spend Christmas with my family this year, they'll get next year. That's compromise. If we disagree on what color to paint the living room, we compromise. Those are healthy compromises. They don't change either person. They simply allow two people to build a life together. But somewhere along the way, I think we started calling something else compromise. Changing the way you laugh, hiding your emotions because they're too much, pretending you don't enjoy the things you love anymore, giving up your ambitions because they don't fit someone else's future, becoming quieter, becoming smaller, becoming someone who's easier to live with. That isn't compromise. That's choosing who you are allowed to be. And I don't think that's what love is supposed to ask of us. I don't think we're supposed to spend our lives carving pieces out of ourselves until we fit into somebody else's mold. I think the right relationship is the one where two people can already fit, not because they're perfect, but because they embrace each other's shape. They don't spend years sanding away the parts that make the other person who they are. They make room for one another, they grow together, they don't reshape each other. And that brings me to something else I've heard. I've heard somebody say, and I'm not going to name names, but you know who you are, quote, falling in love is a dream state. It doesn't last, unquote. And honestly, I disagree. Not because I think relationships never change. They do. Life changes, people grow, circumstances change. But I don't think that being in love is something that's simply supposed to disappear. We've become very comfortable saying, well, eventually you're not in love anymore, you just love them. And I understand the distinction people are trying to make, but I wonder, why have we accepted that as inevitable? Why have we accepted that being in love naturally fades into simply caring deeply for someone? What if we've confused two entirely different things? What if what disappears isn't love at all? What if what disappears is infatuation, the excitement, the novelty, the rush of discovering someone for the first time? Those things are temporary, but devotion, choosing someone, wanting to know them, wanting to keep discovering them, wanting to wake up beside them because it's them, why should that disappear? Maybe it does for some people, but I don't think we should automatically accept that it's supposed to. Because if we spend decades telling ourselves that eventually you'll stop falling in love and learn how to live together, I have to ask, was it being in love that disappeared? Or was it something else that we've mistakenly called love all along? I don't have the answer, obviously, but I think it's a question worth finishing. And this is where I want you to stop thinking about relationships in general and start thinking about yours. Not your neighbors, not your parents, not your best friends. Yours. Because it's very easy to agree with ideas when they apply to someone else. It's much harder when they apply to us. So let me ask you something. If you met the person you're with today, knowing everything you know now, would you still choose them? Not because you've spent 10 years together, not because you have children together, not because leaving would be difficult, and not because you've built a life together. Simply because they're them. Would you still choose them? Sit with that question for a moment, because I think a lot of us answer it far more quickly than we should. Here's another question. If everything practical disappeared tomorrow, the house, the shared routine, the financial security, the comfort, the familiarity, if all of it disappeared, would you still feel the exact same way about this person? Or have those things quietly become a part of what you now call love? And I know those are uncomfortable questions. They're supposed to be. Because I think we've become very good at confusing different emotions. Caring about someone, feeling responsible for someone, feeling safe with someone, being grateful for someone. Those are beautiful things. But are they really the same thing as being deeply, passionately, undeniably in love? I don't think they're identical. And I just wonder if somewhere along the way we've stopped asking ourselves which one we're actually feeling. Maybe that's why so many people say, I love them, but in the same next breath they say, I'm just not in love anymore. I understand what they mean, but I also wonder, have we simply accepted that as inevitable because we've heard it our entire lives? Or have we ever stopped to ask whether it has to be true? And maybe you're listening to all this and thinking, well, that's a nice thought, but what do you believe? So let me answer that for you. This isn't me telling you what your relationship should look like. This isn't me telling you what love is supposed to be. This is simply the standard I've chosen for my own life. It's the kind of love I hope I never stop believing exists. I don't want to simply love someone. I want to be in love with them tomorrow, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. I want to wake up beside the same person and still look at them the way I did when I first realized I was falling for them. I want them to still surprise me. I want to still be curious about them. I want to keep discovering who they are. I want the good parts, the bad parts. I want the ugly parts. I want all of it. I want to not only accept them, but I want to embrace every single part of them. Like I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to choose them every single day because I do not believe that love is a finish line. I think it's a decision you keep making. And the kind of love I want is a love that consumes, a love that nourishes, a love that challenges me, a love that comforts me. And yes, a love that hurts. Not because love is supposed to be painful, but because loving someone that deeply means allowing yourself to be vulnerable. It means allowing another human being to matter enough that they can break your heart. And strangely, I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of it because it means you're alive. It means you care enough to risk something. And I'd rather feel that than spend a lifetime simply existing beside someone because it's comfortable and because I'm content. And yeah, maybe I'm a hopeless romantic. Maybe I'll change my mind one day. I don't know. But today, that's what I believe. And until life proves me wrong, I refuse to believe that being in love is simply something we're supposed to outgrow. Now I want to touch on something else. I had a conversation with a friend a while ago, and honestly, I don't even remember how we got into this subject. I just remember where we ended up. He was talking to me about his marriage, about his life, about feeling stuck. He wasn't asking me to solve anything. At first, he was just venting, and that's okay. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need someone to listen. But eventually, he asked me what I thought, and one thing he said stuck with me. He said, my life is good. I have a beautiful wife. I have beautiful children. I shouldn't want more. And that's the sentence that stayed with me. I shouldn't want more. Because I think a lot of people confuse two very different things, being content and being happy. I don't think they're the same thing. Contentment is looking at your life and saying, this is okay. Happiness is looking at your life and saying, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here. Contentment says, I can live like this. Happiness says, I wouldn't choose anything else. Those are not the same feeling. And so I told him something I genuinely believe. I said, you're allowed to want whatever it is that you want. Not what society wants from you, not what your parents expect from you, not what other people think should make you happy. You. because you're the one that has to live your life. And then he said, what am I supposed to do? Burn it all down? And I asked him, are you considering it? He went very quiet, a long silence, and then he said, I don't know. And I don't think he realized how important that answer was. Because my next question wasn't should you leave, and it wasn't should you stay. It was simply much simpler. If you're seriously considering to burn it down, how happy could you have been in the first place? And what is that feeling truly telling you? Is it fear? Is it regret? Is it restlessness? Or have you simply become comfortable? Have you slowly accepted a life that no longer feels like your own? I don't know. I cannot answer it for him, and I certainly cannot answer it for you. But I did leave him with one question. If you're considering to burn your life down, how happy could you really have been in the first place? And because if that thought keeps returning, then maybe it deserves your attention. Not because it tells you what to do, but because it asks you something you may have been avoiding for years. Are you truly happy or just content? Because contentment and happiness are not the same thing. You do not have to be just content. You can be happy. Like I said, contentment says this is acceptable. Happiness says, given a chance, I choose this life and this person again. So let's finish the thought. Bring it all home. Today, I haven't tried to tell you what love is. I've tried to ask whether the definition you've been living by is actually your own. Because maybe, just maybe, we've accepted things that were never meant to be accepted. We accepted the spark dies. We've accepted that being in love eventually simply becomes loving someone. We've accepted that contentment is the same thing as happiness. We've accepted that becoming smaller for someone else is compromise. And maybe we've stopped questioning those ideas because everyone around us keeps repeating them. And here's what I believe. I believe you're allowed to want more than simply being content. I believe you're allowed to want a love that still excites you years from now. I believe you're allowed to wake up beside someone and still feel grateful that it's them, and not because you're simply comfortable and content. I believe you're allowed to want devotion, not because someone else says you should, but because it's your life and you only get one. And maybe that's the biggest question of all. If your life ends tomorrow, would you honestly feel like you've lived it on your own terms? Would you look back and think, I chose this? Or would you realize that somewhere along the way you stopped choosing and simply started accepting? So before you leave today, I want you to ask yourself two questions. Are you happy or are you content? Because those are not the same thing. Contentment says, this is enough. Happiness says, I wouldn't trade this for anything. And then ask yourself one last question. If you've been told that falling in love is only temporary, that eventually everyone stops being in love, do you truly believe that because you've experienced it? Or is that love that you think is love simply contentment? And if what disappeared really was love, then maybe that's exactly what happened. But if what disappeared was novelty, excitement, infatuation, habit, then perhaps we've been giving the wrong thing the name love all along. I don't know. I cannot answer that for you. Only you can. Just realize, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you do not have to be content. You do not have to accept whatever relationship or situation you are in. You deserve to be genuinely, ecstatically happy. You understand that, right? Everybody deserves to be happy, in love, constantly. Do not accept contentment. You only have one life. Live it. But I hope that the next time someone tells you that's just how love works, you stop for a moment and ask yourself, is it though? And if you do that, my job is done. Anyway, enough for today. Thank you so much for listening. Please comment below. Please talk to me about it. I respond to every single comment. Channel isn't very big yet, so please do comment because I respond. And I love to think about this with you guys. That's why it's called Finish the Thought. Again, thank you for listening. If you want to see my vacation photos, please go to ange.sangash on Instagram. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Later, Gator. After a while, crocodile